day, the 9th day of the month of August 2023. It is the 9th day of the month of August 2023. Of course, it is the Summit O'Clock, where we go live to scale the heights to bring you all the conversations around our beautiful continent of Africa. Of course, trying to make sense of some of those conversations, and we get to bring you important guests to help us break those particular issues down for us right here. As always, my name is Eugene. And thank you for making time, and it's always a pleasure having you on the program. This program is very interactive. All you need to do is, if you're Xing, for those who don't know, X is formerly Twitter. If you're Xing, X us on the hashtag TheSummitRW. I'll be able to read those X's. It's going to be difficult for some of us in this industry to get used to that. So if you're tweeting, tweet us and use the hashtag TheSummitRW. You can tweet me directly at Eugene Anangwe, or tweet me also adding at RBA Rwanda. We'll be able to get in touch with you, and you'll be able to share with us your tweets, and we'll be able to read them right there. Also, go on to our YouTube channel. We are live and direct right about now. All you need to do is go onto the chat section, leave a comment right there, and I'll also be able to read that particular feedback that will be coming from there. On tonight's Matters on the Summit, we are aware that the Golden Business Forum 2023 will be coming down right here in Kigali, Rwanda, from the 16th to the 18th of this amazing month of August, and it will be featuring a range of interactive cluster forums and plenary sessions right here in Rwanda. Tonight on the program, we're going to be giving you a front row seat or an early access to this particular forum, but also narrowing down to a conversation that is around the role of private sector in socio-economic development across the continent. What is needed to be done to be able to actually improve or amplify the voice of the private sector across the region. But let's take a look at what we know about this forum that I just mentioned earlier on right here. It is actually abbreviated as GBF. To mean the Golden Business Forum, and of course it will be held right here in Kigali, like I said, on the 16th to 18th of August. Of course, as we speak, we have delegates that have already been coming in terms of registration and all that. And of course, we know that this particular forum is going to serve as a catalyst for business development in Africa. We'll be finding out how, in which way will it be a catalyst for business development across the continent. One more thing that we also know about this specific forum is that it aims at discussing sustainable solutions to ongoing economic challenges. We understand that the continent of Africa has not been spared the global shocks in terms of impact. Trade is being impacted, of course, we know along those lines, but we'll try to also understand how this particular forum will be discussing these matters, and in which ways will they be coming up with solutions to these particular issues. We know that approximately the intra-Africa trade is now about 20% of total imports and exports. This is approximately, but of course we'll be able to try to understand, are we happy with this particular number? We have an amazing guest in the panel who will also be trying to break down or making sense of these numbers for us and what needs to be done to be able to improve these particular numbers. We also know that Asia and Europe are still maintaining the lead in terms of being trade partners for the continent. Why is that so? The continent wants to trade with itself, but of course we are seeing a lot of that going to Asia and Europe. Intra-ESC trade approximately hitting the $10 billion mark in 2023. Is the continent satisfied? Is the region satisfied with this? Are these numbers accurate? We'll also try to make sense of that right here on the program. One more statistic that I want to share with you before I go and introduce our panelists right here is that this particular forum is looking at also the target by the East Africa Business Council, which had set a target of $15 billion in 2023. They missed that particular mark. Why? And what is the role of the private sector in ensuring that these particular numbers are actually elevated or excavated or put to the level that is actually satisfactory, for lack of a better word? Let me introduce our amazing panelists who have joined us right here on the program. They could have chosen to be in bed right now or resting at home after a very long day, but they're here with us to serve the nation and to serve the world in their different capacities. I'm here seated with Aimable Kimenyi, who's the Vice Chairperson, Private Sector Federation of Rwanda. Thank you for making time. Thank you. Thank you for joining us on this amazing program. I'm also aware that you are also into the tech space. Yes. We'll also be talking a bit about what are the challenges facing the private institutions that are within that particular space. Andrew Mould is joining us on the program. Thank you so much, Andrew, for making time. It's been a long time coming. I've been trying to chase around, but we are lucky that we've had you tonight on the summit. Andrew Mould is the Chief of Regional Integration for Eastern Africa at UNECA. Thank you for making time on the program.
You're welcome.
I want us to set off this conversation with Aimable on this particular forum that I just mentioned earlier on. And of course, a lot of people usually say we have a lot of big words, big English words, but they want to understand in detail what these words mean. How is this forum going to be a catalyst for business development in Africa? In which way that other forums have not been able to do, or in which way that this one is going to amplify even what the past forums have had or have done before?
Yeah, thank you, Eugene. Today will be the highlight.
Yes.
I invite everyone to come,
yes,
or to follow on the social medias. But our specialty is PSF. We are the one who manage daily all this advocacy issue, interacting with many stakeholders, and being the one who's doing the event. Yeah, it's going to be amazing. Yeah. And we have decided to, the chamber, our federation has 5 clusters or 5 chambers, and all chambers will have discussion along sensitive subjects. Yeah. So we have manufacturer, we have trade, we have people in specialized clusters. Yeah. So inside we have people with disabilities, youth and women, and we will be discussing agriculture. How can we have enough to eat in Africa? What can we put in the soil? Yeah. And we'll discussing services. Yeah. So and how it's organized is we will see today what is the status. Again, it's a forum. Yeah. There's nothing now. Yeah. It's going to be there. Yeah. But what we put down is people are free to express themselves. So they're going to be, it's an open platform. Yes. Where all stakeholders can be able to air their views, yes, air their grievances, celebrate success stories, but also look at where they are stumbling blocks. So we want, that's the target number one is if everyone will express themselves. Okay. And we see where we are. Yeah. We see the opportunities of Africa. And I hope you agree with me, Africa's opportunities. Of course. Nice. So, and as private sector, we will see what are the challenges. What are the challenges which are blocking us to get there? And together, because it's important. We have seen the 20% you are showing, we have seen African private sectors, we don't talk to each other. Don't talk to each other. Yeah. Yeah. We talk to Russia, to France, to US, easily. But we don't talk to each other. Yeah. So this is a platform we, as PSF, as Rwanda, want to create. So again, digital, you say I'm in the digital, it's possible today with the IT, the digital world. So we are trying to create a place where people can connect. Yeah. And discuss these challenges and have a follow-up. Yeah. That's the difference. Interesting. Andrew, I want to bring you in on this. And of course, I want to pick from what he says. Private sectors across the continent, across the region, have not been talking to each other. There's seemingly a need for them to talk to other, like we said, Europe and Asia are the ones that are actually sharing a bigger chunk of what we're seeing in terms of trade between Africa and those particular regions of the world. Why do you think there's this gap? And because tonight we're talking about what is needed to actually strengthen the voice of private sector. He has mentioned that that's one of the red flags. There's no talking to each other. Why do you think this is the case? And do you feel that something can be done to fix this?
Well, I mean, I think the clearest response to this challenge is the African Continental Free Trade Area as an initiative. I mean, it's a historic, I know people use the word game changer very freely, but I think there are some reasons to believe that this will change things quite dramatically over the mid to long run. It's effectively true what you were saying, that there is this lack of maybe contacts with the private sectors in other countries quite often. From For a country like Rwanda, at the moment, you've got about 5 or 6 significant African trading partners. You trade mostly within the region. And I think the idea of the AFCFTA is not that you trade with every single one of the 54 or 55 AU member states, but rather that you start to expand the number of countries with which you have meaningful business. And the AFCFTA will create those opportunities as long as all the member states are very rigorous in terms of implementing the tariff reductions and the NTBs. So I think that's very important, and that's incumbent clearly on governments to make sure that the schedules are followed in terms of tariff reductions. As you're aware, trading started officially on 1st of January 2021 now. So we're into the second full year of implementation. Things have been a little bit delayed. I don't know in your show if in past editions you've talked about the guided trade initiative, for example. Some of the private sector actors there certainly had some teething problems and some challenges. But I think if there's an overwhelming emphasis on the part of government authorities initially about removing those barriers and following the tariff schedules, then the opportunities will open up for the private sector.
You mentioned, before I go to Amabel, you mentioned the fact that trading did start in 2021, like you said. It's 2023 today. And on this particular platform, we've talked a lot extensively about the AFCFTA, and I believe we'll continue because it's work in progress. That feeling of slowness, and also the aspect of the notion that private sector is not actually jumping in on this as it should, that this seems to be a politically led initiative, that the politicians are the ones who are really spearheading it, but private sector is not actually actively putting their voice on this. What would you tell us tonight about this? Is this factual? Is it?
Well, I mean, I think there was a lot to negotiate. There's never been a free trade agreement with so many member states anywhere in the world. I mean, it's massive. The African continent is geographically vast, and the number of member states. So the European Union, when it was negotiated initially, it was 6 member states. It was relatively easy when they got to their customs union, for example, in the 60s. So in terms of negotiation, it was obvious that it was going to take some years. When the European Union decided to create a European single market, that was back in the mid-1980s, it took them 6 or 7 years to actually finalize and get that in place. So that's where we're at now, I think, with the African continent as well. The timeline's actually quite similar. We've had the unfortunate situation of the COVID pandemic, which clearly put things back a little bit. But if you look at the negotiations, the protocols on investment, on competition, on intellectual property have all been finalized. So really it is now about putting it into operation. And that's why the first point I made was the importance of people respecting the schedules in terms of reducing the tariffs on trade, because clearly the private sector doesn't have any new opportunities until those tariff reductions take place, and until the protocols to reduce the NTBs are acted upon. You see, so we think of it as an agreement about exports, but in reality, it's an agreement about imports. It's about making the African markets more open to imports from other African countries. And so that's where I think the challenge is at the moment. And we had the Guided Trade Initiative last year, and Rwanda was a participant in that. Kenya was as well, for example, in our region. And you heard some stories where things didn't quite go as people had hoped. So the Kenyan I think the shipment of tea arrived only a few months ago, and it took 6 months or something. And I think the shipment of batteries that they did to Ghana went via Singapore or something. So there were some logistical challenges you could see. And also I understand there were problems in terms of documentation when some of these exports reached Ghana. But that was the whole point of the Guided Trade Initiative, to learn from it and see where the problems are going to be. But I think now it's incumbent on authorities across the region now to actually start acting and start importing under AFCFTA rules now.
Interesting that you bring that, because I want to hear at this particular business forum, what is the space for the conversation around AFCFTA, particularly when it comes to the voice of the private sector on this, especially coming or building up on that question I asked, the notion that politicians are the ones driving this AFCFTA, and that's why we are even hearing about the need for political will why are we not hearing the need for private sector will? Because it's now dangerous. If the politicians don't put in political will, then it seems that this whole dream becomes a challenge. It becomes a chasing like mirage.
Yeah, so he's right when he say about 7 years.
Yeah.
It took 7 years, Europe, and there were 6 countries. So we need, as African, to understand this is a huge move we are doing. We need to understand. We need to accept it, private and public. Now, my concern is there was a document at Dangote explaining he has a cement factory close to Benin, and he was not being able to export to Benin. A Chinese company was able to bring faster the cement to that place. And him saying something like this, it's really, he was talking about the free trade area signing.
Yeah.
He's not happy. He's our eldest. When it comes to us, like Rwanda, like other countries, what we are seeing is politicians should become private. What I'm trying to say is, in business, things go fast. It's not like if I'm shipping something and something arriving in the customs, it needs to get out and
do what it has been imported to do.
Otherwise, a business is corrupted.
Yeah.
So what we are not seeing here is really like an Excel sheet. Simple, everyone can understand, which will tell you these potatoes, you put in the Excel sheet, they are going to live here at this date, these are the taxes, this is the clearing in where they are going. That's what should start coming, like really tangible data. And lastly, there is infrastructure, which is not there yet. We can't move everything by air or by sea. I think it's a good opportunity for private sector to start building railways. But
why are we not seeing private sector building railways?
But if you go to the news in Kenya, Uganda, wherever, you will see only like a politician talking about railways.
Why? And that's my question. Why is the voice of private sector not so loud enough in such projects? And that's the question. What needs to be done?
Again, you have to come to GBF. That's what we are trying to understand. That's what we are trying to discuss with our leaders, because we'll be having ministers, we'll be having seniors. So what is happening? So you want to do this, but you can't do it. It's like when you are sleeping, you can't move. And you want to do the thing. So I think we need really a clear roadmap with the joint roadmap. He talked about bringing down the taxes, the tariffs.
Yeah.
We are looking on a unified procurement system.
Yeah.
Because if you give me a tender of building a railway in Nigeria, connecting it to Ghana, I will learn, and I will do the same here. And maybe I'll be the one to connect Africa. But if you go to the tender systems of each country, which work isolated, who win the tender? That's a proof. So don't come back to me asking, take data from, let's ask each government to list 3 years. Let's, maybe in GBF we'll ask that. Each government to list down the 3 years tenders. And let's see who took them.
Who are winning them.
And let's see if there were no local companies able to do it. Simple analysis, but for me, if that analysis can be done, we can see a lot. And we can question ourselves, what are we doing? Because you can't tell me go and drink this water and you take it away, or you understand?
Yeah. So you feel politicians or the politicians, let me push this also to Andrew. Andrew, from what he says and the analogies he gives, what are you reading, what are you hearing in terms of the reasons as to why the voice of private sector is not being heard, or probably it is there but not being amplified enough to be able to see them take up some of these projects, like he just said. When you talk about the railway system across the region, it's the politicians who are pushing or driving these agendas. Why don't we see more private sector taking up those kind of projects or leading in this?
I think part of the challenge is, you know, those kind of infrastructures are large-scale investment projects.
Big tickets, yes.
Yeah, and then you need the public sector really to be behind them. And I was speaking to you before we started these conversations about, you know, the dearth of large companies relatively on the continent. I mean, that's very, very clear. And East Africa has a particular problem with this. If you look at the list of the top 200 companies in the list of African business each year, you'll find that Eastern Africa is very poorly represented, underrepresented. But on a global scale, it's even more worrying. And in my work, often I like to make the comparison, for example, between India and Africa. Both continents have similar populations. About 30 years ago, per capita incomes in India were half what they are currently in the continent, in the African continent. So they were considerably poorer than the African continent. But over the last 30 years, they've had a reform process and a degree of liberalization, and they've grown consistently strongly. Now, the African continent has also seen improvement in its growth rates, but not to the same level. And the key difference between the two is that the Indian subcontinent is a unified market, and the African continent is not. So it puts African business at a constant disadvantage. And one of the most shocking statistics I noted some months back was I was looking at the Fortune 500, the list of largest companies in the world. 30 years ago, again, China had just 3 companies in that list, and the United States dominated by far, and European companies as well. Fast forward to now, and we now see that China has 136 companies in that list. And the United States, I think it's 122. It's surpassed the United States. So China is now a big global player with large companies with a global presence.
And the private sector there must have played a key role in getting there.
Yes, although state-owned companies also played an important role. It wasn't just purely private sector, and also foreign investors invested in China. Okay. What I wanted to just say, though, was, do you know how many African companies are on that list of the top 500 today?
Tell me.
0. There's not one African company which is in the list of the Fortune 500, not even South African or Egyptian, Nigerian firms. And I think that, you know, should be a wake-up call, really. You know, the global economy now is basically not exactly governed, but at least the economies are led by large entities, you know, with companies which are playing in large unified markets, and Africa can no longer afford to have a fragmented approach. It needs to come together if it's to be able to compete on global markets.
Yeah, interesting. And I want to get perspectives from Olivier, because you mentioned the global competitiveness and the role of public and private institutions in getting you know, those institutions to be at the level of rankings that he mentions. You've mentioned that this particular forum is going to allow for conversations around creating sustainable solutions to the global shocks that have hit the continent, including Rwanda and other countries. For me, I want to understand what are on the table. What are the key potential solutions that are being positioned on the table to create that conversation that will be able to make this forum not just a talking shop?
Thank you. So they have been like a pre-discussion.
Correct.
And we try to get the issues, and we try to engage people who to know those issues. So I will take one example.
Yes.
And I will disagree with my brother on the top list of 500 in that example. Africa doesn't need to be on this list. you know, some people wake up and do a list, and I respect it. But the way the economy is running, you know, I don't. It will take long to explain. But you know, in computer we have some languages. You know, a machine can talk this language, another can talk this. So we don't talk same language. I'll give you an example, like in agriculture.
So you feel it's not fair to rank everybody on such?
It's not.
When environments are different?
Yes, because let's see, like, I don't have an example, but the way we live, the food we eat. If I buy something which is not bio, cheap, an avocado here costs like 500 Rwandan francs. In the UK, I purchased it at £3. Yep. And it was a small one.
Very expensive. Yeah.
Very expensive. So you are telling me, so I need to triple the, no, it's even like 10 times my price. Yeah. So I go to that list, because to go to that list, you need to sell as many as avocados as that, and at the same price. Yeah. But we have the avocados at cheap price, even cheaper. Yeah. So, but where he's right is, all the avocados we have, do we sell them? Do we have supply chain? We have supply chain discussion. Do we have a good supply chain, because we have like Carrefour taking avocados in Rwanda? And are we maintaining the deliveries? Because if we can do that, even if it's 500, there is a lot of families who will be happy, because they will be able to buy something else, which is not, again, that expensive, and they will be happy. Because what we are looking in this discussion is, let's have our youth working. So working in those avocados farms. Yes. Let's have, we have a lot of shortage, like in maize, in rice. But we have valleys. So as PSF, even farmers themselves, with the minister, we are going to create like a small, it's not going to be small, but like a fund, just to give farmers money to buy things he wants. Because all these farmers were telling us, banking system, it's not even politics. It's our banking system. You go there as a farmer. What is the response they are going to give you? What are you doing here? You are a farmer. You know our culture. Farmers in the UK, it's another story. So this is what that's where we are going.
That's the conversation we want to have.
We are going there. They need a bank, like a small saving, where they buy seeds. I need to buy something directly. They buy it without going in these institutions, which are looking other way. Me, I'm in software. I'm in 5 countries in Africa. I'm in Ghana, Rwanda, Burundi, Zambia, Kenya, soon Mozambique, and Madagascar. Right? I was talking to a leader in Bank de Development, BRD. Yes. I look at
here in Rwanda?
Here in Rwanda. He look at me, no, Emar, I can't give you a loan. Although I'm sitting here, I'm the vice chair of PSF, but our systems are not understanding. So where I'm trying to tell you, we don't need to convert the Chinese, the Indian model. Today there's technology. To send an email in past, you have to 2 months. Now it's instant. So what I'm thinking is, to railways, you say it's a big infrastructure, but maybe from Europe, who was going to buy steel outside Africa. So the logistic to bring it, that's expensive maybe. For Europe, because of the climate, is going to work hard in summer, so it's snow. Workforce in Europe is very expensive. Here it's not expensive. So that's where I disagree with you. Like, we need, because the engineers who's going to do the project are going to be European or Chinese. So it will be expensive. Explain to me, this was possible like 100 years ago. A lot of railways were built in Africa. But
Indian and Chinese labor,
you see, but it was done. So I think there is a collaboration and a flip 360 change in mindset. But from us before, from anyone, from the private sector, we need to believe we can.
You can do it.
Do the rice.
Right.
We need to believe we can do the railways.
Do the railways, yes.
We need to believe.
I wouldn't disagree with that.
Yeah.
I wasn't suggesting a following necessarily of the Chinese or Indian or European models at all, actually. All I was saying was that one thing that confers a big advantage for them is that they operate in a unified market, and the African continent does not.
It's fragmented.
Yes, exactly. So you mentioned the issue of procurement, for example, government procurement. One of the things the European Union started to do was to have competitive procurement processes so any member state can compete to provide those services which other governments may want within the region. Those kind of things create a lot of opportunities for the private sector if they're well managed. And the issue of the avocados and then the price you could get in London, the whole idea and philosophy behind the AFCFTA is to start looking for the market opportunities within the continent, rather than always think that the new export opportunities are outside. I personally don't believe this any longer. You know, I think the continent's been trying for 60 years on preferential market access terms to enter into the European or US market under AGOA, and it hasn't really worked, actually. When you look at it in the end, it hasn't been transformational, and it hasn't helped in terms of job creation in the way that it should have. I think the time is to look for the opportunities on the continent, but for that to happen, implementation of the AFCFTA has to happen.
Yeah. But then also, I think there's an aspect of thinking before ACFTA full implementation, what are the trends that we are seeing and what is being done within what is already available? Especially, there was a recent event around the seed sector. And I had a very grim statistic on the floor that even the movement of seeds within just the continent is below 20%. There are a lot of restrictions still. And so for me, what I want to ask, even from an ACFTA perspective and how private sector can plug in, is this really something that just seems to be nice to have, but we are not necessarily showing the will to really make us believe that it is something that we really need to have from an implementation perspective, based on even what is going on right now as we speak? This is open for both of you. Who wants to take it?
Okay. Yeah, we need to do a strategy.
Yeah.
Because we are in a world today where everything is easy. So people are not sitting together and do a strategy and respect it. And I say it again. If our leaders, politicians in Africa wake up and say, we are going to do one procurement system, huge things will happen, huge. If they wake up, but we do it together. Because if we don't do it together, it will be like here. Here in Rwanda, there's a preferential Rwandan companies. But also, creating a company in Rwanda takes 6 minutes, 6 hours, 1 day.
Yes, yes.
So he will come from UK and we create a company, and the next day he do the tender as a local. So even that tender, if we are not well organized, we'll not make it. So we need to sit and do a planning and respect it and together.
But when you say we need, because you sit in Private Sector Federation, which is actually the advocacy body for private sector players, what is stopping you from sitting together all this time? What are you waiting for? Are you still planning to sit together or planning to plan to sit together?
Now you understand why GBF, why we took these 2 days trying to discuss on this with all, we have like 1,000 people trying to discuss and noting down, creating, even after, that's a start. GBF will be a start. There will be a live platform with all associations or private sector in Africa, trying to hit quick and fast. But if we decide, let's say with Nigeria, they decide, okay, we have an issue with Dangote cement, we want to move it from Nigeria to Benin. If we say like this, we need to see the politician running to open the borders. If we have someone like the T he was talking about, going around the world, we we in that planning, we say something is wrong. We fix it very quickly. And if there is someone testing foods and there is an issue, he should not be happy, I have stopped this food.
Yeah.
We should discuss to find out something to fix. Like there is a country where, let's say, the milk quality has to be, let's say, level 1.
Yeah.
But we have companies which can produce level 1, but level 2 and 3. But there is a neighbor country which accepts level 3 in Africa. And an agent on the border will say, no, this thing is not certified. It's not level 1. Because Rwanda eat level 1, drink level 1, it can't go. Do you understand that the level of, when I say we need to go on the same and fast,
same language and
same
fast
speed? Because if we broke the milk on the borders, it will ferment.
Yeah.
So that maybe here they don't like number 3, but in Nigeria they like.
So you can take it there.
Yes. Now I went to Ghana. You drink milk from France. We have a lot of cows here. Now, how do we bring milk in Ghana? So GBF is going really to be a database. I was seeing you guys talking about the data. We don't have data. And one of our goals in PSF is to have this data bank where we can say Ghana needs milk. So we talk with a company here or in Kenya or in Uganda. We ship the milk. And we think that's where will come a railway, because the shipment will be so huge and visible. You say tangible. So we also think use the data will help, but putting together our forces. Because if we talk to Ghana Chamber of Commerce and they don't reply, that's where we fail. But this movement we are trying to kick off is to let them give us data. We give you data. We share. That's the agreement we should start in GBF.
You know, actually, on this point, I was recently in Comoros. I went to a supermarket, bought a fruit juice. I had a look at where it's Vietnam, you know, in Comoros, in East Africa. And on another occasion, I was in a supermarket in Accra, in Ghana, and I also bought a fruit juice there, and it was from South Korea.
You see?
And so you start to think these supply chains are really, there's a lot of costs. So how there's a lot of costs for the African continent when these are products that could easily be produced and, you know, supplied on the African continent. It seems like it also, I mean, I had one colleague as well who bought French green beans in Djibouti, which had been imported from France, but which had been produced in Kenya. So those kind of supply chains make no sense. I mean, ecologically, you know, environmentally, it's a disaster, isn't it? You know, to be taking green beans from Kenya all the way to France and then back to Djibouti. I think there's better ways of organizing economic relations, and that really means priming African markets. And that is where the responsibility, I think, of governments come in terms of the harmonization you're talking about. So everybody recognizes the same product standards. These NTBs are very quickly removed, as well as the tariff barriers. Then African countries will be competing on a more even footing compared to, for example, the European companies or the Indian companies and the like. But until you get to that point, there's always this competitive disadvantage.
Yes, I want also to touch on, even on the technology, China. You know, they created an environment and of course the labor. And all American came in, and some other companies. And people think China is big because of China, but it's big because of this direct investment with this iPhone and I think even Samsung. Everyone is doing their things there. So why in Africa we don't take an Indian pharmaceutical company? We take them. We give them the license directly on all countries. But we tell them, you need to work, we need to train, we need to put a school there for pharmaceutical school. And every raw material is here. Now, that decision will come only when people in the pharmaceutical industry are connected. And I think we have even the leadership of Africa pharmaceutical here. But it will be just a flag on that building if a Ghanaian a Nigerian is not looking like this is done in Ethiopia, and it's a good product. And another thing to add on that, we need to in Rwanda it's working. We are taking made in Rwanda products, but it took like 7 years. We were talking with the Minister of Trade, it took 7 years. Government, we need to put a big investment on African products, marketing, because if I see always on TV, President or something from Versace, that's what I will wear. So again, marketing, removing barriers, not following the right, like we have to be unconventional. Our leadership taught to us we have to be unconventional to arrive where we want to go.
Yeah, it's faster.
But we can't go there alone. We need first of us the private sector to be together, and that's what we are trying to do in GBF.
Yeah.
While we are together, we invite the government, and we want them to be with us. Now, again, GBF, that will be GBF. I can't talk everything. Yeah. I hope that we will achieve that. It's really to talk the right thing to make it happen. And if we are lucky, all these private association can link with us, and we can show the government, hey, these are the blockage. This, can you help us here? And if you are lucky, they can remove. For me, the tariff. If you are drinking a juice from Vietnam, you know how many tariffs are there? Keep the tariff, give me that possibility. At least I'll be living like a Vietnam. Now, another thing, the productivity, the quality of Africa is still low. And that's where we need to bring that Vietnam company in Africa. Respect their intellectual property, but work with them, try to do more with them. So that's GBF. I can't say everything.
Yeah. But what you're saying, Emabel, also is trying, I'm trying to also digest some of the points that you're making, and I'm also sure some of viewers are. When you mention that you want government to help even in marketing and do all that part, isn't that what probably those who are saying that private sector wants everything done by government for them? Why can't they be the ones to take the lead, put their voice on these things to be able to drive what they really want to achieve as private sector?
Okay, that would be chicken and egg philosophy. Who starts, who doesn't? Yeah. Let me give a simple example. In Rwanda, at least because we are here, your t-shirt, my t-shirt are made in Rwanda. Because the Minister of Trade and the government of Rwanda started a policy made in Rwanda. There is even in Ghana, every Friday, each one is wearing a Ghanaian traditional clothes. You don't know how the impact on this small thing. So the government is like the dad in the family. So they are leading. So there is small things that we can do together, of course. And again...
But they've been saying we want a private sector-led economy.
My friend told you about the SMEs. Yeah. Let's go back there. We don't have like those giant companies who can say like Heineken. Heineken I think is more powerful than many ministries in the Netherlands. Heineken can say, okay, I'm going to go there. Then Heineken move. In Africa, we don't have that yet. But it's not a problem. But we can strategize. We can strategize.
I would disagree with you.
Yeah, go ahead.
There comes a point where the African continent also has to work to scale.
Yeah.
And so you need to prime those medium and larger size companies. And I don't see that happening to the extent.
Prime, what is it?
I'm saying that government strategy needs to particularly look out for the interests of those larger players and give them space to develop and create more employment. Okay. If you look at the amount of trade that's undertaken by the small companies don't tend to trade very much. And you look at the few larger companies in the region, they tend to be undertaking the bulk of trade. Yeah. But they have problems. So if you speak with companies like Bakreza, for example, in the importation of trying to get, I believe it was maize from Zambia, they had a lot of problems and desisted in the end. I think those are the actors you need to talk about. When I was mentioning about the European process and their single market program, which started in the mid-80s, the key drivers behind the negotiations were the largest European companies because they wanted that to happen. And hence there was pressure from the private sector from the very beginning. Now, in Africa, the AFCFTAs kind of happened a little bit in the reverse, but that doesn't mean that the private sector can't now take the protagonism. But what we
needed for private sector to take the protagonism?
Well, firstly, I think, as I said, we have to respect what was agreed under the terms of the agreement. So we need to see the harmonization that you talked of, product standards and accepting of the same certificates, rules of origin, all of that needs to be standardized. I mean, that's a fundamental ingredient in creating a continental market. It's boring, it's not a very interesting topic unless you're a specialist in that particular field, but it needs to be done.
But wait, while you are there and you have seen many countries, do you think there is like a testing machine? There is this machine where you put in the plug, you see it's coming red. You see there is electricity. Do you think there is a system for us private sector to evaluate? To evaluate this is the standard checked. Like,
but that's why you have standards bureaus which are supposed to defend consumer interests. Because I was going to say two things to make this work really. Firstly, it's not only about trade, it's about cross-border investment. We need more cross-border investment. And you spoke of Vietnamese or Chinese companies. I think we need to talk much more about African cross-border investment. So more investment from the regional hubs like Kenya or South Africa or Egypt investing on the continent more. That will create a lot more synergies for trade. You understand? And there's a very nice book by a Senegalese economist called Achaleke, who talks about how the larger firms are like the baobabs of the system. They create the shade under which the small and medium companies can flourish, but unless you have that shade, they won't. I believe that's the way it tends to work. And the other element there, I was going to mention too, wasn't I?
Maybe it will come back.
It will come back.
But when I said,
hold that first, because we're also running out of time. Let me just also bring in our viewers who are also watching and bringing points or comments. I think I'll be able to read some of them right about now. And if you're out there and you're really listening through this particular conversation over the last 47 minutes, feel free to share your thoughts at the hashtag TheSummitRW or go onto our chat box on our live stream on YouTube. I'll be happy to read your feedback. I have Jeanette Omutoniwase, who's actually saying doing international business is still a challenge for startups. We don't have enough and flexible infrastructure. The shipping cost is high, and yet we want to do international trade. Government and private companies need to work on this. This is what she says. And of course, this is where I was going to ask a particular question. When you talked about SCFTA and consolidating the African market and trying to open it up for the bigger global market, aren't we thinking in a different way? Instead of building more of the businesses or trade happening within the African continent. I mean, this is what she's saying. Why do we always want to ship outside the international market when we haven't probably fully utilized the local market? But yet again, when they want to fulfill the African market, there are those obstacles, and they probably find it easier to even do business with European nations. What is being done in this end, or what should be done in this end?
Well, I think you were misunderstanding, Eugene, what I was trying to say. I was actually saying, yes, effectively, local regional companies need to focus on the African market more. But for that to happen, the terms of the agreement needs to be implemented. So, for example, the recent dynamics we've seen within the East Africa community. There was a newspaper article in the East African the other day saying that intra-EAC trade had declined, I think, by $1.4 billion, 30% last year. It wasn't the case. If you look at the official statistic, actually the last 3 years, including during the pandemic, intra-EAC trade has been very healthy. And you see the trade going up very sharply from Kenya, but also Tanzania and Uganda have been doing very well in that market. And that's a change because for 4 or 5 years, there was a degree of stagnation in the EAC market. So I think it's that kind of vibrancy in the inter-regional trade that businesses have to latch on to. Now, for the EAC, the AFCFTA internally won't make a big difference, initially at least, because the tariffs have already been removed. The NTBs is another matter. you know, which continue to exist.
Yeah.
Where it's going to make a difference for a country like Rwanda is with your other potential partners on the continent.
Yeah.
So instead of Rwanda trading in significant terms with 5 or 6 African countries, you'd like to see that expand to 12 or 14.
Yeah.
You understand? It doesn't mean that Rwanda's going to trade with everybody.
Okay.
Where the small companies come in, where this lady was making this comment, we'll go back to the argument I was making before. I believe it's more incumbent on the medium and larger companies to do that trade and then make the demands on the smaller companies as suppliers. You understand? Because there are risks involved in, you know, trans-border trade, aren't there? Insurance, the logistic costs, the rest of it. So quite often it's better that it goes under the umbrella of the companies which are already undertaking the larger trades, but they make more demands on the smaller companies, the baobabs, as I said. You know.
I have Eric who's saying, imagine buying beans in Djibouti, imported from France, yet manufactured in Kenya. This is terrible for our continental economies. There is a lot that needs to be done by our policymakers to put up favorable policies that allow local traders to trade and with each other. And I want to bring this to you, Aimable. You want policymakers to actually drive a shift from this sad scenario. But what more can private sector do? Let's say today policies are not created to avoid this scenario.
Yes.
What happens? What does the private sector do? That's what we're talking about, the voice of the private sector. How far can you go in pushing for your agenda?
Yeah, to be frank, because in business, it's money. Money talks. And if someone has more money, more productivity, more quality, he wins. Because the customer, and we don't want to hijack our customer, our customer will choose the other product. Let me give you an example. You will go in a country, like if one country is removing plastics, but the other countries are doing plastics. And the other countries are allowed to bring in plastics. What will happen to this country? The company who manufactures will close. So if the policymaker doesn't understand we are in competition and he removes plastics, it's okay, it's environmental. But everyone is bringing in plastics. Everyone is bringing in plastics. Me, I'm not allowed to say it. What I'm trying to tell you is government are like dads in the family. They set the rules and they become fair to everyone. And to becoming fair to everyone is, when I was saying the juice, we need that company to come here because of, there is some experience we don't have. We have to accept that in quality production, in some good product.
But you know, that example's not a very good one, though. So, for example, there's a Zazam in neighbouring Tanzania, which makes fruit juices very well. You know, Kenya also has companies do that.
That's the
and you don't actually see them a lot on the market, which is a good. I had a Kenyan friend come here recently, and she said, I didn't notice much in the way of Kenyan produced products in the supermarket shelves.
Andrew, you mentioned that was a good example. In closing, because we're also being told we need to pave way for the news, what would be the good examples? What would be the best way forward in strengthening the voice of private sector, especially in taking a lead in socio-economic development?
I think it's inevitable once this agreement is actually up and running that the private sector will react very positively to the market opportunities that become available. But it does require governments to be very mindful of their obligations under the terms of the AFCFTA. You know. And part of it is what you're talking about, harmonization. So I think Rwanda did the right policy on the plastics, but clearly it puts Rwanda at a disadvantage if it's the only country that does it. There was another example with the textiles. You know, Rwanda adopted a policy there in terms of restricting a little bit more the second-hand clothing.
While the others are allowed.
The others in principle, it was an EAC-wide policy, but of course, because of bilateral pressure, one by one, the countries no longer pursued. Rwanda didn't. So Rwanda did the right thing there, and this is a powerful example, isn't it, of the importance of acting together in economic affairs. You know, to creating that unified approach, unified market. Otherwise, it's divide and rule the continent.
Aimable, what do we do? Where do we move from here? And of course, what do you want to tell us that you feel you cannot go home without mentioning, especially on the Golden Business Forum, but especially plugging into tonight's conversation?
Yes. I want everyone, not everyone, to follow GBF.
Yeah. Why not everyone?
No, everyone, because they can't come, but they can follow online.
Okay, okay.
Because it will be like boxing.
Okay.
Yeah, we are going to try to box mentally, not physically, to find answers.
Yeah.
And it's possible.
Yeah.
But our close ally is the governments. And if they can come a little bit low, and maybe one day they should come and do business, and we switch. So they become business people, we become public people.
Yeah.
So they fear when something is stopped, how it's very bad, how it's ugly. So that will be GBF.
Okay.
Putting this pain in everyone understanding. But the pain is not even my business only. We have people we give jobs.
Yeah.
There are people dying going to Europe.
Yeah.
I don't know if this should be clear for everyone. Yeah. It's not like private, it's a war. We are fighting for food security, job security. Yeah. So it's even insane to not understand this.
Where the problems are.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amable. Thank you so much for that. Of course, let me just read a few more. I have Nasuma on Twitter who says, thanks again. Another problem we have, we need to have specialized markets for ready products, whereby when someone needs clothes or he or she doesn't go where they sell tomatoes, but you can find that in the marketplace where they sell wines, crafts, in where there are tomatoes. I think you've confused me, but I think I'll be able to make sense of that. Fidel says, I've missed the first 35 minutes. I need to add this on your calendar. Every Wednesday, 9 p.m., we are live right here. The summit goes live. And you also said you've been able to follow this particular topic up to this particular level. On our chats, we have Felix Nshimimana, who says that one thing we should give and support to boost the voice of private sector is to offer the huge freedom regarding nationalization approach and fair imposition of taxes. I think this also came up so well in our past shows where we talked about that. Nevertheless, there are some drawbacks regarding free movement of capital between countries that should be eliminated towards motivating the investors. Hirana Felix also, thank you very much for your feedback. My good friend Alex Naria, thank you so much also. I've seen your message. And of course, it's a good question. What is stopping you guys from sitting down and agreeing on the way forward on the strength or the voice of the private sector? I want to wrap it there. And of course, I want to say thank you to my amazing panelists right here, Mabel Kimenyi, Vice Chairperson, Private Sector Federation, and Andrew Mould, Chief of Regional Integration and FCATA Cluster Regional Office for Eastern Africa at UNECA. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being on the program. And to you who's been watching, thank you for being a part of the program. As always, my name is Eugene. And good night and good luck. Thank you, guys. I told you it's going to be the shortest 1 hour.
It was short, actually. I thought it was going to take a bit longer.